The educated youth Julian Miller fell into the main irrigation ditch, and it was my own 2 hands that hauled him out. Afterward, he insisted on marrying me. I told myself that since I'd touched his body, he had to take responsibility. Besides, I saw that he was handsome and well-educated, so I agreed. But after we got married, he turned out to be utterly useless. He did nothing but read books, leaving the entire burden of supporting the family on my shoulders. Little did I know that as soon as he passed the college entrance exams, he would vanish. For 10 years, there wasn't a single word from him. When I was bedridden and at death's door, he finally returned, with my cousin Sarah by his side. She wore a gentle smile, but her words were laced with poison. "We're taking your son to the city to live a life of luxury. You can pass away in peace now. You're dying anyway. Don't stand in the way of his future." I died with my eyes wide open in resentment. When I opened them again, I was back on the day he fell into the water to set a trap for me. In this life, let's see if their secret affair can find any happiness without my sacrifice. I was walking out of the fields with a hoe on my shoulder. Sweat rolled down my spine, feeling sticky and incredibly uncomfortable. But the chill in my heart was colder than chewing on crushed ice. I hadn't even fully processed the fact that I had been reborn when my cousin, Sarah Thompson, came rushing along the ridge of the field, running like a madwoman. Looking at her face made my teeth ache with rage, but surprisingly, another emotion flickered through me: pure admiration. Her looks were truly stunning. No wonder Julian Miller was so black-hearted. He set a trap for me, just for her sake. If I were in his shoes, I'd probably want to take a few extra looks at a beauty like that too. Back then, when he said he wanted me, why did I only stare at his pale, pretty face instead of thinking things through? In my past life, it was this woman who smiled and told me I was dying anyway and shouldn't ruin my son's future. It was also her who dragged me to save Julian after he fell into the water, leaving me soaking wet as I dragged that man to shore, only to be tormented until my strength was spent and I eventually died. I have to remember this well. What good is a handsome face? You can't turn it into a meal, and it might just cost you your life. Ruby, Sarah panted as she reached me, reaching out to grab my arm. "Hurry, get a move on and help me save someone." I abruptly stepped back, planted my hoe on the ridge, and tilted my chin at her. "What? Save who? You're not making any sense." She clearly hesitated for a split second, her eyes darting around like lightning before she regained her frantic, worried expression. "It's that educated youth, Julian Miller. The one you always say is so handsome. He slipped and fell into the ditch at the east end of the village. I can't swim. Hurry, follow me and pull him out." I laughed coldly inside, but my face showed hesitation. "Cousin, it's not that I won't go, but look at me." I gestured to my own frame. "Then think about how big and tall Julian is. Even if I jump in, could I even pull him out? If I can't save him and end up drowning myself, that's not saving someone. That's just adding to the mess." Sarah didn't expect me to say that, and she grew even more frantic. Her tone turned sharp with frustration. "Ruby Taylor, how can you say that at a time like this? You're usually so strong at work. Why are you making excuses now? Are you really going to just stand by and watch someone die?" That was a heavy accusation. Several women weeding nearby looked over. I felt nothing but contempt. Save him? Save my foot? Watch him die? In my last life, I hauled him to shore, and what was the result? I worked myself to the bone to support the family, even having to beg my own parents for supplies just so Julian could focus on his studies. But the moment he passed those exams, he and Sarah ran off together for 10 years without a trace. They only came back when I was gravely ill, because I was dying and they couldn't have children of their own. They wanted to steal the son I had raised single-handedly. I remember it vividly. That day, Sarah stood by my bed, smiling with a fragile sweetness, though her words were sharper than a knife. "Ruby, we're taking your son to the city to live a life of luxury. You can pass away in peace now. You're dying anyway. Don't stand in the way of his future." It was only then that I realized the accident of him falling into the water years ago was a play directed by the two of them. They were just waiting for a fool like me to act as their stepping stone. Thinking of this, I immediately bellowed toward the cornfield. Arthur Reed, come here quick. Sarah says someone fell into the water. Give us a hand." Since being reborn, I had a clear map of my surroundings. Arthur Reed was guarding the sprouts in the east cornfield. He was the best swimmer in the village. Just a moment ago, I'd seen him squatting in the field having a smoke. Sarah's face went pale. She reached out to cover my mouth. Ruby Taylor, what are you shouting for? We don't need to bother anyone else for such a small matter. I shoved her hand away with enough force to make her stumble. A small matter? I raised my voice even higher, making sure everyone around could hear. A matter involving someone's life is a small matter. To you? Sarah, I don't understand what you're saying anymore. Arthur is a strong man and a great swimmer. He's much more likely to save him. Surely that's better than a girl like me? You won't go get the best swimmer in the village, but you're dead set on clinging to me. What exactly are you up to? Sarah's lips trembled. She stood there frozen, unable to utter a single word in response. The people standing around began to whisper and gossip. Ruby is right. A decent girl touching a man's body like that? She's got a reputation to think about. Exactly. Arthur was right there, and Sarah didn't go to him. She kept pestering Ruby instead. What was she trying to pull? Was she making a fool out of Ruby? The chatter wasn't loud, but it reached Sarah Thompson's ears clearly. She shot me a look so burning with rage it felt like she wanted to swallow me alive. Right then, the corn stalks rustled loudly, and Arthur Reed stepped out, an unlit pipe clamped between his teeth. What's all the shouting for, Ruby? I'm right here guarding the sprouts. Arthur, I pointed at Sarah. My cousin says Julian Miller fell into the ditch at the edge of the village, and she's frantic to find someone to save him. I'm just a girl. How could I haul a grown man out? But luckily, you're the best swimmer in this whole county. As soon as Arthur heard that, he tucked his pipe into his waistband. Is that so? Come on, come on! Quit wasting time and lead the way. Sarah had no choice but to grit her teeth, her eyes rimmed with red as she led the crowd toward the east end of the village. I followed leisurely behind them with my hoe over my shoulder, finally feeling the first bit of that suffocating anger in my chest begin to vent. The ditch wasn't far. From a distance, we could see Julian Miller standing perfectly straight under a willow tree, his neck craned as he watched our direction. His clothes were spotless. He didn't look a thing like someone who had fallen into the water. I found it almost hilarious. In my past life, had he waited until he actually saw me coming before he jumped? He certainly valued his own skin. When Julian saw Sarah leading a whole crowd toward him, his brow furrowed deeply. Then, as if reaching a sudden decision, he abruptly spun around and... Splash! Good grief, why did Julian just jump in himself? An eagle-eyed, stout older woman cried out. We all watched as Julian took a header straight into the deep section of the water, sending up a massive spray. Sarah looked stunned for a moment before shrieking, Julian! Julian! The people around us were bewildered. What's going on? Wasn't he just standing right there? Didn't Sarah say he'd already fallen in and was half dead? But he was just standing there perfectly fine. That's bizarre. Arthur Reed looked stunned too, let out a curse, and dove into the ditch in one leap. He was a fantastic swimmer. In a flash, he reached the struggling Julian, grabbed him by the neck from behind, and hauled him back to the bank. Everyone on shore let out a sigh of relief, though the gossip intensified. Scared me to death. Why on earth would he jump in on his own? Sarah, didn't you say Julian fell in and was a goner? He was standing there just fine a second ago. Yeah, that was strange. Sarah didn't say a word, her fingers clutching tightly at the hem of her shirt. As Arthur dragged him onto the bank, Julian coughed up water, looking disheveled and pathetic, though clearly nothing was seriously wrong with him. Arthur wrung out the hem of his soaked shirt and muttered, That's weird. I could have sworn Julian knows how to swim. The moment those words left his mouth, the surrounding chatter died down instantly. People exchanged meaningful glances. Sarah glared at me, her eyes brimming with resentment. Julian, having regained some strength, looked up at me with watery, soulful eyes. His gaze was incredibly complex. There was irritation that his plan had gone awry, confusion, but mostly, he was acting. That was exactly how he was in my past life, putting on that innocent, pure act to trick me into working like a pack animal to support the family. Standing in the crowd, I met their gazes without flinching. This was only the beginning. They'd better try their best to stay calm. Sarah, however, wasn't ready to give up. Ruby, look at how soaked Julian is. If the wind picks up on the way back to the youth hostel and he catches a cold, then what? Your house is nearby and your father is the district captain. Why don't you help him back to your place first, so he can change into something warm? If you hadn't been so slow and hesitant, he wouldn't have had to suffer like this. So, Because my father is the district captain, he's supposed to manage this nonsense? And she wanted me to escort him? My parents and brother were all out working the fields. If I brought a strange man home alone, the village gossip would drown me. My temper flared, and I snapped right at her face. Sarah Thompson, watch your mouth. You told me Julian fell in, so I called Arthur, the best swimmer available. Why were you so hell-bent on making me haul him out? You're a girl and so am I. Where would I get the strength? It was clearly you who kept hesitating and trying to stop Arthur from saving him, and now you're trying to pin the blame on me. What's your angle? The look in everyone's eyes shifted. Furthermore, I continued, my father is the district captain, true, but the captain's job is to lead production, not to be a nanny for some educated youth. The hostel has a supervisor and a kitchen. Isn't it perfectly convenient to go back there to change and get warm? What kind of habit is this, insisting on bringing him to my house? If you're so sincerely worried about him, then you take him home yourself. Why do you keep pestering me? My words were blunt and stinging. The older women immediately started whispering. Ruby is absolutely right. What is wrong with Sarah today? Ruby doesn't owe Julian anything. Men and women should keep their distance. If word got out, how would Ruby ever find a husband? Absolutely not. Sarah tried to argue back. I want to help too, but my parents wouldn't allow it. Your father loves you. He wouldn't scold you for it. I spat on the ground in contempt. My parents love me, and that's exactly why they wouldn't want me doing something that would ruin my reputation. Shut your mouth, Sarah Thompson. What's all the shouting about? Why is everyone gathered here? Is the fieldwork all finished? A stern voice barked from behind the crowd. The onlookers parted to both sides as my father marched forward, hoe in hand, followed by 2 members of the production team. He glanced briefly at Julian Miller, then at Sarah, before finally letting his gaze rest on me. I immediately stepped toward him, putting on a look of total grievance. Dad, Cousin Sarah came running to tell me Julian fell into the ditch. She kept pushing me to go fish him out, even though I told her I wasn't strong enough to pull him. I suggested calling Arthur instead, but look, Julian was just standing right there on the bank. As soon as we showed up, he jumped in himself, and Arthur had to pull him out anyway. I pointed toward Arthur Reed, who gave a solemn, honest nod. And after all that, Sarah insisted I take Julian back to our house. Does that make any sense to you? A man and a woman alone together? Isn't she worried about ruining my reputation? My father's face darkened instantly. Sarah, what kind of cousin are you? You don't care about Ruby's reputation at all, forcing her to be alone with a male student? Is that how your parents raised you? Sarah started shaking, and this time her tears were real. Uncle, I didn't mean it that way. I was just worried about Julian. After all, if something happened to him, wouldn't our village be held responsible? That's not for you to worry about, my father cut her off. He turned to look at Julian Miller. Mr. Miller, you're an educated man. Surely you understand ethics better than anyone. Out here in the country, the distance between men and women is no joking matter. If you really fell in, you could have called for someone from the youth hostel or any of the young men in the village. Why target a young girl? My Ruby is as thin as a rail. How on earth was she supposed to pull you out? Julian was fuming but didn't dare speak up, his fists clenched tight. I didn't think it through. My apologies for troubling you, Captain, and the rest of the neighbors. My father stopped looking at him and turned to the young men. Arthur, you and the boys take Mr. Drank Miller back to the youth hostel. The rest of you disperse. Is the work done that you're all standing here watching a show? Since the captain had spoken, no one dared linger. As Julian was being helped away, he shot a sharp, venomous look back at me. I glared right back. Useless coward, only knows how to hide behind a woman. Sarah covered her face and ran off too. With the crowd gone, only my father and I remained by the ditch. He patted my shoulder and couldn't suppress a sigh. Ruby, I know you like handsome faces, but that Miller boy doesn't look like the type to settle down. Stay away from him from now on. Stop staring at him. Sarah probably thought you had a crush on him, which is why she tried to set you two up. I felt my face turn bright red. When did I ever look at him? Look at those scrawny arms and legs. How could he ever be as sturdy as one of our own farm boys? Seeing that my father still looked skeptical, I let something slip. Seriously, Dad. Now, take our neighbor for example. Now that's a real man. He's strong and healthy. You can tell just by looking at him that he'd be easy to provide for. Easy to provide for? What on earth are you talking about, girl? My father raised his hand as if to swat me, but he suddenly froze. "Oh, Silas, where did you come from? Is your fieldwork finished?" I jumped out of my skin and slowly turned my head. Silas Vance was standing behind us, hoe on his shoulder. "All done, sir. Are you two just admiring the ditch?" My father gave a forced laugh and went over to chat with him. I was so embarrassed I wanted to dig a hole in the ground with my toes and disappear. Silas Vance was the neighbor I had just mentioned. After he walked away, my father turned back and gave me a light rap on the head. "No filter at all. A young lady talking about who is easy to provide for. Aren't you ashamed?" "What's there to be ashamed of? I'm telling the truth." And it was true. Silas Vance had been like a sturdy young bull since he was a kid, solid and hard-working. However, he was a man of few words. When we were little, I'd picked plenty of fights with him, mocking him for being dark-skinned and quiet, calling him a black log. After I married Julian Miller, Silas had left the village too. People said he went into business, but I never saw him again until the day I died. I didn't expect to see him again so soon in this life, let alone have him overhear me talking nonsense like that. From that day on, Sarah Thompson and Julian Miller didn't back down. If anything, they became more aggressive. Sarah was like a fly buzzing in my ear all day long. "Oh, Ruby, you have no idea how hard Julian has it. He keeps studying every day, even after a full day's work. Once he passes the college entrance exam, his status will change completely. He might even become a high-ranking official. If you're nice to him now, how could he ever forget you later? He might even take you to the city to live a life of luxury." She spun those tall tales, painting such a beautiful picture that it sounded like I was already a high society wife. It made me want to gag. In my past life, she had used that same sweet talk, and a fool like me had swallowed it whole, working myself to death to support the family and Julian's education. And how did that end? I stopped shucking the corn in my hands and looked up at her. "Since you're praising him like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, why don't you go for him yourself? You're pretty and have a sweet tongue. You two are a perfect match. I don't have that kind of luck, and I'm not craving it either." Sarah's face flushed. I'm just looking out for you." I rolled my eyes in contempt, too lazy to even respond, and went back to my corn. Since Sarah's mouth had proven completely useless, Julian Miller started getting restless. He needed money, he needed a free source of labor, and he needed someone to handle the chores so he could focus on his studies. On the way home from work, he would often intentionally wait for me at the bend in the field path. Whenever I approached, he would fix me with a gaze so thick with tender affection, it was enough to make a dog gag. I simply looked straight ahead, my pace never faltering for a single second. Occasionally, he'd manage to squeeze out a line or two. "Comrade Taylor, the weather is lovely today, isn't it?" Or, "Comrade Taylor just finished work? You must be exhausted." I usually responded with a simple or acted like I hadn't heard a thing. Once, he stepped directly in front of me, blocking my path. "Comrade Ruby Taylor, I feel like there might be a slight misunderstanding between us. Regarding the incident where I fell into the water, I truly didn't ask Sarah to go find you. A petite girl like you going into the water. I was worried too, but I know you were the one who called for help to save me, and I haven't had the chance to thank you properly." He spoke with such apparent sincerity and added to that truly handsome face, the old me probably would have had a racing heart and shaking knees. Instead, I stopped, put my hands on my hips, and looked him up and down. "Thank me? The person who saved you was Arthur Reed. Have you thanked him yet?" Julian froze. I haven't had the chance yet." I let out a long, contemptuous roll of my eyes. "If you have time to stand here calculating who to thank, you'd be better off earning some extra work points. You can't fill your belly with smooth talk." The older women nearby burst into hearty laughter, showing him no mercy at all. Julian's face turned beet red instantly. He had likely never been insulted like that to his face, let alone by a country girl. I squared my shoulders and strode right past him. Right after the fall harvest, the production brigade wanted to recruit a tallyman to record work points. It was light work with high pay, and more than a few people had their eyes on it. My father didn't want to be accused of favoritism, so he decided to hold a public vote. Logically, this had nothing to do with Julian Miller, as the position always went to a local. But somehow, rumors started spreading from the youth hostel that the students were better educated and could keep clearer records. And if a choice had to be made, Julian was the man for the job. When my father heard this, he gave a disdainful snort. That Julian Miller can't even calculate his own points correctly. He wants to keep the books for the whole team? He's dreaming. 2 days later, Sarah Thompson carried a small basket over to my house, claiming her mother had steamed some apple cakes and sent some over for my mother to taste. Before the cakes were even half eaten, the conversation veered off course. "Auntie, don't you think the tallyman job needs someone with a real education to do it right? Otherwise, if the points are recorded wrong, won't the commune members start a riot?" My mother kept her head down, stitching a shoe sole, and didn't respond. Sarah turned to me. "Ruby, don't you agree? I think Julian is quite a good fit. He's educated and very careful." I took a bite of a cake. It was quite sweet. Careful or not, I wouldn't know. But he's certainly got thick skin. He can't even manage his own points, yet he wants to manage the books for the whole team? "Cousin, you didn't bring these cakes just to lobby for him and grease our palms, did you?" Sarah's expression soured. "What are you saying? I'm thinking about the good of the brigade." I brushed the crumbs off my hands. "Cousin, if you have time, help your mother with the chores. Stop daydreaming about things that don't exist. The rules for choosing a tallyman are set. My father's word isn't the final say, so what are you worried about?" She grabbed her basket with a shaky hand and left in a huff. My mother shot me a look. "You really shouldn't be so blunt with her." I just ignored it. Failing to get the tallyman job, the two snakes decided to hatch a filthy scheme. That day, it was our group's turn to harvest sweet potatoes on a dry patch of land. That plot was isolated, far from the village, surrounded by waist-high weeds and jagged rocky slopes. In the afternoon, I felt a cramp in my stomach, so I told the group leader I was heading into a nearby gully to handle some business. Just as I sat down, I heard rustling footsteps and hushed voices nearby. "Right here. See, the grass is thick and it's well hidden behind this boulder. Are you sure she'll pass by here in a bit?" It was Sarah and Julian. I immediately held my breath. "I'm sure," Sarah whispered. "The leader said once this patch is done, they'll take this trail down the mountain. She'll be trailing behind. I'll go get the others. You wait here. By the time I get back, she won't be able to explain herself, even if she has 100 mouths. Once her reputation is trashed, who else can she turn to but you?" My scalp crawled hearing that. These two black-hearted dogs were planning such a vile trick to ruin my virtue. As the footsteps faded, I tied my drawstring, my heart pounding. "Don't panic." I crouched low, followed the edge of the gully, and ran back the other way until I found Silas Vance, who was carrying a shoulder pole. Silas, I need your help." Seeing how pale I was, Silas set down his pole. "What's wrong?" I leaned in and spoke as fast as the wind. His face darkened instantly. I circled back to the original path, a half-full basket of sweet potatoes on my back, pretending to head down the mountain. As I reached the jagged rocky slope, a figure suddenly lunged out from the bushes. It was Julian Miller. His face was a mask of desperate, reckless urgency as he reached out to grab my arm. "Ruby, it's me? Don't you Ruby me. I've got nothing to say to you." I leaped backward, evading his grasp, and screamed at the top of my lungs, "Help! Someone help! There's a predator out here." Julian froze. He clearly hadn't expected me to call for help so decisively. A flash of panic flickered across his face, and he lunged forward again, trying to cover my mouth. Right at that moment, 3 or 4 young men sprang out from the tall weeds nearby, led by Silas Vance. Without uttering a single word, Silas delivered a sharp kick straight to Julian's stomach. Julian let out a pathetic wail and curled into a ball on the ground. "You piece of filth!" Silas spat. "Trying to pull a stunt like this in broad daylight? Tie him up and take him to the brigade office." The other guys swarmed him, pinning his arms back and searching for rope. Julian started squealing like a stuck pig. "It's a mistake. A misunderstanding. I just came here to talk to Comrade Ruby Taylor about our relationship." "Relationship?" Silas crouched down and grabbed him by the collar. "Oh, so you hide in the bushes to have a relationship? You were clearly trying to assault her." Just then, Sarah Thompson showed up, trailing the group leader and a few other village women. She was pretending to be in a frantic hurry as they ran up from a different trail. "What's happened?" I thought I heard Ruby screaming. Her words died in her throat when she saw Julian bound hand and foot. I seized the opportunity, pointing at Julian while looking at my cousin. "You got here just in time, Sarah. This is that educated, polite Mr. Miller you kept talking about. He was hiding here waiting to pounce on me. If Silas and the others hadn't been passing by, my life would be over today. I made sure my eyes turned red and watery right on cue. The women who had come along erupted like a thunderclap. Good heavens, he actually tried that? Shameless scumbag, send him to the labor camp. Sarah's hands clenched so hard her knuckles turned white, but she couldn't find her voice. The group leader, his face grim, spoke up. Enough, we'll settle this at the office. Sarah, you're coming too. You told us there was an indecent affair going on over here, which is why we rushed down. This is clearly an attempted assault. You'd better explain yourself clearly. At the brigade office, my father was so livid he kept slamming his fist on the desk. If there hadn't been so many people watching, he likely would have beaten Julian Miller within an inch of his life. With the evidence stacked against him, Julian had no room to lie. He eventually confessed that the whole thing was Sarah's idea. Sarah, for her part, refused to admit it to her grave, claiming instead that Julian had threatened her. It was a classic case of dog eats dog. The assault charge against Julian was undeniable. In these times, such a crime could be handled severely or leniently. My father reported it directly to the commune. After an investigation, since no physical harm had been done, Julian's record was slapped with a permanent black mark, and he was sent off to a labor farm in a much more remote area. Though Sarah insisted she was coerced, her reputation was completely trashed. As the storm died down, I noticed that Silas Vance started sticking close. Whenever I finished work, he was never far behind. When I went to fetch water, he'd appear by the well, as if he simply couldn't rest easy. My parents seemed to notice something too, but they didn't say anything. Occasionally, they'd even invite him over for dinner. He was as quiet as ever, but he'd silently help me with chores, hauling firewood or fixing farm tools. Once, while I was cutting grass for the pigs, I sliced my finger. He plucked a weed, crushed it into a pulp, and clumsily applied the juice to the wound. "This stops the bleeding," he muttered. Looking at his focused expression, a small corner of my heart suddenly softened. Before Julian was sent away, Sarah went to see him every single day. My mother and aunt tried to talk sense into her, but she just snapped back at them. My mother eventually lost her temper. "She's a lost cause. I'm done with that mother and daughter duo. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Ruby, you stay away from your cousin. Don't let her bad influence rub off on you." I found it strange, though. Julian Miller had no future left now. What was she still clinging to? He wasn't the star student who had passed the exams and brought her glory like in the past life. Not long after, rumors began to swirl through the village. Sarah Thompson was pregnant. At first, my aunt refused to believe it, even standing in the middle of the village with her hands on her hips, cursing out the gossips. That was until she tried to arrange a match for Sarah with another family. The groom's mother took one look at Sarah and immediately turned around and walked out. Only then did my aunt believe it. She chased Sarah through the village with a burning branch. Driven into a corner, Sarah finally admitted it was Julian's. She claimed Julian had promised to marry her and take her to the city. But Julian was at a labor farm with a criminal record. He had no chance of getting into college, let alone returning to the city. I ran into Sarah at the edge of the village once. Her belly was clearly showing, and the arrogance was gone. "Are you happy now, Ruby Taylor? You ruined us." She clutched her stomach and tried to lung at me to scratch my face. "I ruined you?" I dodged her easily, hoisting my basket of pig feed. "You chose your own path. Don't go pinning your mess on me." I wasn't about to get into a physical scuffle with her. If she tripped and fell, she'd surely blame me for that too. By early spring, Silas Vance came to see my father. He said he didn't want to be tied to the village his whole life and wanted to head south to see what the world had to offer. My father took a long drag from his pipe and went silent for a long time. "You're going alone? I'm afraid my Ruby won't be able to bear seeing you go." I was stunned. It turned out Silas and I really had been seeing each other in secret. But how did my father figure it out so clearly? Silas Vance looked up, his dark eyes meeting my father's. "Sir, as long as Ruby agrees, I'll take her with me wherever I go. If I have a crust of bread to eat, I promise she'll never go hungry." My father turned his gaze to me. My heart was thumping wildly, but I nodded decisively. I wanted to go out and see the world too. In my past life, I had stayed cooped up in this tiny village until the day I died. It was a wasted life. My father let out a long sigh, looking as though a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Go on then. Go out there. work hard, and open your eyes to the world. Don't worry about things here at home. We quickly set a date for our engagement and marriage. The wedding was a simple affair. Just a nice meal for the neighbors and relatives. Sarah Thompson didn't show up. Her mother had locked her inside because she wouldn't stop screaming that she couldn't stand to see me having a good life. Silas and I packed our meager belongings and boarded a train heading south. The world outside was vast, but it was also harsh. Silas was strong and hardworking, eventually finding work driving long-haul freight trucks. I started out running a street stall selling breakfast. Silas hated seeing me work so hard, but I wanted to build our future together. Eventually, he used some connections to find me a seasonal position at a garment factory. The days were so busy my feet barely touched the ground, but my mind was finally at peace. Every night, I'd count our savings and think about the hope of soon bringing my parents out of the countryside. Silas wasn't quiet anymore. He was incredibly thoughtful and handed every penny he earned over to me. We rarely said "I love you," but I knew he did. 5 years later, we drove our newly purchased car back to the village. The roads had been repaved, but the village itself hadn't changed much. My family's old house had been renovated, and my brother was about to get married. When my parents saw us, they were so overcome with joy that tears streamed down their faces. While we were eating, a woman with disheveled hair leading 2 filthy children burst in. It was Sarah. She had aged terribly and looked utterly haggard, exactly like I had in my previous life. She stared intently at my wool coat, then at the car outside, and finally at Silas. Years ago, before Julian Miller arrived, she used to mock me, saying I was only fit for the mud-covered farm boys like Silas. Back then, she looked down on everyone in this village. "Ruby, Silas, are you two back for the holidays?" She squeezed out a smile that looked more painful than crying. I said nothing. Suddenly, she became agitated. "Take me with you. Please, I'm begging you, take me with you. I can't survive like this anymore." She began to wail, explaining through her sobs that Julian had gotten into a fight at the labor farm and ended up with a permanent limp. Now he just drank all day and hit her, and he was even fooling around with a widow in the village. "I want a divorce, but he won't let me. Ruby, save me." Sarah tried to reach out and grab my hand, but Silas stepped in front of me to block her. She then tried to throw herself at his feet. "Silas, you were always so kind and big-hearted. Help me." Silas pulled me back. "If your husband hits you, go to the village council or the commune. We have no business in your marriage." "But you do. You have money," Sarah shrieked, her eyes wild and crazed. My brother hurried over to pull her away so she couldn't get near me again. "Ruby Taylor, you're living so well now. Can't you just help me a little? If you had just stayed with Julian back then, I'd be living a life of luxury in the city right now. This is all your fault." I looked down at her from where I stood. "Sarah? You chose your own path. You reap what you sow. Your misery today is the harvest of the seeds you planted yesterday. It has nothing to do with me. Ben, please show our cousin out." After that day, Sarah didn't come looking for me again. I heard she went back and had a violent fight with Julian. Both of them were so bruised and battered they couldn't get out of bed. We only stayed for 5 days. On the morning we left, just as the car reached the edge of the village, Sarah appeared from nowhere and chased after us. "Take me with you. I'm sorry. I know I was wrong." In the cloud of dust, I caught a glimpse of someone standing by the weeds on the roadside. It was Julian. He was leaning on a cane with a crippled leg, his former star student appearance long gone. Silas didn't slow down. He gently patted my hand to comfort me. In the rearview mirror, Sarah's silhouette grew smaller and smaller, and Julian shrank into a tiny black speck until they both vanished at the end of the dusty road. In my past life, I was foolish to trust the wrong people and ended up dragging my parents down with me. I will always remember how my parents' hair turned white early from trying to shoulder my burdens. I remember the son I raised for 10 years, who didn't even look back when he left. I don't need to actively seek revenge on them because I have to move forward and live my new life. I have to reclaim the time I lost and ensure my parents have a peaceful old age. This is the perfect ending. The retribution they brought upon themselves is the only explanation I ever needed.